Hello, good morning, Africa. Good morning, South Sudan. Welcome to African Morning Breakfast Show, coming to you live right here on SABC from our studio in South Sudan capital, Juba. My name is Majur Cholkur, and it's a brand new day. Thank you so much for following us in your house, in your offices, wherever you're watching us in all part of the continents of Africa. This is African Morning Breakfast Show that brings to you issues that matters to you in every edition of African Morning Breakfast Show. In this edition right here, we are going to cross all over the world. This month of May is a blessed month for all the journalists all over the world, and journalists are commemorating the World Press Freedom Day. South Sudan is not left out in the commemoration of the World Press Freedom Day, and I'm joined right here by veteran journalists in the media professions in the Republic of South Sudan. These are none other than Chol Jan, the chief editor of Catholic Radio Network, not forgetting Haya Irene, the principals of Media Development Institute, commonly known as MDI, in the Republic of South Sudan. She also works for Female Journalist Network as the chairperson. They're going to help us into digestion of more about the celebration of World Press Freedom Day that is going to happen right here in South Sudan capital and some part of the state of the Republic of South Sudan. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to say it, I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have this great opportunity to host you in African Morning Breakfast Show for the first time. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
In our normal business of African Morning Breakfast Show, you have to start, though we're not taking breakfast here, but we believe we have been taking breakfast from our various places. Now, first, your greeting to your loved one, your friend, your colleague, journalists who are in a position to celebrate World Press Freedom Day. I can start with you, Chol Jan.
Thank you so much, and good morning to all our viewers all over the world and in South Sudan. We are really proud to be here today and talking about the important and also the World Press Freedom Day. And this is a brand new morning, as you mentioned earlier. So we in Africa, we always start when the sun is up, then people begin to celebrate that you have seen a new day.
Thank you so much, Chol Jan. And Madam Irene.
Yes. Good morning to our viewers. I am so glad to be here today. And I'm so glad that we are going to celebrate World Press Freedom Day in South Sudan. We are so happy because World Press Freedom Day tells us what we have done over the past years and our plan for media development in South Sudan. So we are going to share a lot in this show. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Irene. And dear viewer, thank you so much for following African Morning Breakfast Show right here on SABC. It is all about World Press Freedom Day. South Sudan seen it gain high independence in 2011, and before independence, South Sudanese journalists and media practitioners in the country has been having a vital role that they have played in the country. And as they join the world to commemorate the World Press Freedom Day, we'll find out what has been the role of the journalists in the country and what has been the role also of the other stakeholders that have relation with the work of the journalists and media practitioners in the country. And my guest right here will be in a position to help us understand the situation that the journalists have been going through in the country, like South Sudan. And right here, Chol Join, let's talk about, as a chief editor of Catholic Radio Network, talking about World Press Freedom Day. What is it all about this year?
Well, thank you so much. The World Press Freedom Day is a day that highlights the achievements that the journalists has been done to the society, to their communities, to inform the public, to entertain, and also send signals to other stakeholders about the crucial role of journalists in the society. When you look at this World Press Freedom Day, it was coming to effect for it to give a chance to reflect and also see how journalists could also be looked like they are part of the society. They are also people who can change the dynamic situation. Yeah, press freedoms come to our situation in South Sudan is something that all the journalists want. But the freedoms of press, it's not that journalists will benefit from it alone. is where the journalist will send the right information to the public and also work hard with the local authority to ensure that at least they promote development and in a peaceful manner.
Okay.
Yeah, journalists also work very hard to ensure that at least they can stop the disinformation. They can work hard to ensure that the information they send out have impact in the community and it can change the world at large.
Okay.
And that's the major role the journalists, more journalists are doing in the studio. And that's the major role also we have this day to celebrate the World Press Freedom Day, which is always marked on the 3rd of May.
Thank you so much, Chol Janj. Madam Hairind, let's learn from you as the chairperson of Female Journalists Network and also as the principal of Media Development Institute in South Sudan. What does this World Press Freedom Day mean to you as someone who has been already practicing journalism before you become part of the administration or the administrators of Hamdi's, talking of Female Journalist Network, talking of MDI right now? What does it mean to you and how can you reflect back to what you have been doing?
Thank you so much, Sean, and welcome again our viewers. Let me first go to the background of World Press Freedom Day. World Press Freedom Day was proclaimed in 1993 by the UN General Assembly. And the purpose was for us to reflect on the role of media and freedom of expression in general. So, and this day is used for advocacy mainly, to advocate for press freedom. And the day gives us an opportunity to bring all the stakeholders together. For example, we are going to have an event tomorrow. We shall have all the media stakeholders coming together in the spirit of dialogue, to dialogue, because much as we have registered a lot of achievements in the media industry of South Sudan, we also have challenges that are facing stakeholders in doing their work. We have challenges facing journalists, which they can express it in a day like World Press Freedom Day. And I expect journalists will be around tomorrow to express the challenges that they are facing. And other stakeholders also, like the government institution who are directly working with the media or ensuring there is protection of journalists, they will also be there tomorrow to also express the challenges that they have. So it is an avenue where people come together to discuss their challenges. For the female journalists, every challenges that journalists face, female journalists face it twice. One is because they are journalists, and second is because they are women. So being a woman and a journalist at the same time, you face a lot of challenges, and which of course I cannot mention all the challenges right now, but some of them include sexual harassment, which female journalists face. Some of them are faced in the field when they go to cover news. So we also have issues to do with lack of training for female journalists. We have lack of opportunities. Not all the female journalists get access to training. And we have realized that even it is worse in the states, at the states level, because in Juba, at least we have few trainings taking place, and some female journalists within Juba can get access to it. But in the states, you find it is very, very difficult for them to get access to training.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that. Thank you so much, Madam Irene and Chol Jan. Let's look at the theme of this year's celebration or commemoration of the World Press Freedom Day, which talk about achieving a future of freedom of expression and other human rights in South Sudan. What does this mean to you as a journalist who has been practicing as the chief editor of Catholic Radio Network and to your fellow colleagues in the media industry?
Well, you know, these days in South Sudan, it has become a special day. Looking at these celebrations and talking about shaping the future of media in the country, several journalists are facing the issue of press freedoms. They cannot speak or they cannot attend some of the conferences. But with this day, we will talk about it. Second thing is about the safety of journalists themselves. Journalists, they need to be saved. They are part of the community. And then if they are part of the community, they need safety. We can also look at the access to information. Who need information most? These are the community. Our society need access to information. For instance, if our president want to address the nation, then that means his message should reach to the public through media. We have a journalist that will play a key role to ensure that the message of the president or other stakeholders can reach to the public. And we become to celebrate this day so that government will also use it as a platform to interact with the journalists. They will interact with the media, yeah, so that at least they will also narrate some of the things that maybe are not going well in the media industry, particularly in our country, in South Sudan. And also, you know, when you look at Article 19 of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it gave a chance that South Sudanese or citizens have a right to information. Yeah, it is a demand for every society to have access to information, and this is very special for the journalists to celebrate. Secondly, these days, you know, it marked 30 years since this day was declared. Yeah, that means it is really very special. We have 30 years now where the days of World Press Freedom Day has been recognized worldwide by the UN Security Council to really look back at the role of journalists. So as a practicing journalist, I look at this day and this celebration as a significant impact to the media and also to the government.
So are you enjoying press freedom in South Sudan?
Well, we can say we have a press freedom, and currently the only important thing that we can say is that we have no journalists which is in detention. Yeah, that is a good news that our people should also acknowledge that shows the freedom of expression is in place. But you know, freedom is always not free. As a media, you have to fight for it, work with other stakeholders to ensure that this freedom of expression should come into its positions like the rest of the world. So every country has a task to work hard with whoever, the security organs and other ways, so that at least you build a trust. Building trust, I think, is the key roles that make us now celebrate this day.
Okay.
And you remember in the past, journalists and the security play together in a pitch, in a footballs. That is really one of the significant, so that we need to continue to enjoy this space of enjoying the press freedom.
Thank you so much, Joel Jan. Madam Irene, you'll come and add. And dear viewer, thank you so much for following African Morning Breakfast Show right here on SABC. In this special edition of African Morning Breakfast Show, we're talking about World Press Freedom Day, that South Sudan joined the rest of the world to commemorate, to look back to the work of the journalists and media practitioners in the country. As we follow this discussion, let's have a break. We'll be right back shortly. Welcome back, dear viewer. Thank you so much for continuing following African Morning Breakfast Show right here on SABC. We continue to talk more about World Press Freedom Day. South Sudanese journalists, media practitioners, and media houses, the partners and media-led organization come together to join the hands and organize the celebration of the World Press Freedom Day. In this discussion, my guests are Chol Jan, the chief editor of Catholic Radio Network, and Haya Hirind, the principals of Media Development Institute, and also the chairperson of Female Journalist Network of South Sudan. Chol Jan and Haya, welcome back.
Thank you.
As we just went for break, I was like, Madam Irene, you'll come and add, looking at the theme of this year, World Press Freedom, and talking of freedom of expression in South Sudan. It has been long that South Sudanese journalists has been complaining about freedom of expression, the right of journalists. So do you think the time since South Sudan gained her independence and up to now, is the freedom of expression being seen that South Sudanese journalists are allowed to express their views, the opinions of the common citizen of South Sudan through the media outlet that they're working?
Thank you, Maju. Freedom of expression is not only for journalists. This is what I want to put across. But freedom of expression is very, very important for journalists, because as journalists, our work is to report what is happening. So if people do not have freedom of expression, then people will not be able to give us information that we would use for reporting in the media. So that is why freedom of expression is very important for journalists, because people have to speak out so that journalists can get information, so that also the information is given back to people, so that people have the right to know, they get information that can help them in making decisions on various issues. So since the independence of South Sudan, I can say that yes, there is some freedom of expression. We cannot deny that there is no freedom of expression in South Sudan. People have been speaking and journalists have been doing their work. Yeah, but there are some gaps that we need to fill. Yeah, when now you ask journalists what are the major challenges in the media industry of South Sudan, they will tell you that it is lack of access to information. And where is the information? It is either people do not want to speak out when journalists go to interview them, or there are no places where information are stored. So these are some of the gaps that as stakeholders we have to discuss and find a way forward. How can people open up to speak to the media? Why do people fear to speak to the media? And why is the media not doing enough? Because people would say the media is not doing enough. The media is copying information from internet. So why is it that we are copying information from internet, yet we have a lot of information?
And this is what will bring me to quote one of the news article which was run yesterday by Voice of America when I was following. One of the journalists reporting for Voice of America was talking about the World Press Freedom Day, and asking some sources about which media outlet or radio station and television that they follow. So some of them were mentioning a different radio station, and they were having different idea of why they mentioned. You know, and majority of them, if I'm not mistaken, based on that story, they were mentioning Voice of America as the main source, talking of BBC, others were talking of iRadio, and to mention few, majority of our local media houses, national broadcasters, were not mentioned by the sources. That tell that maybe the local media houses are not giving the information that other international media houses are also giving. So what do you think is the gap there?
Yeah.
Is it because the national are not professional than the international, or is it because of the restriction of the freedom of expression?
That much I can say that yes, the local media houses have some challenges. If you go to media houses, you find that there are challenges of maybe resources to go and cover news, for example, but maybe the foreign or international media are a bit equipped with resources so they can access a lot of places to get information. But as stakeholders, we need to look at these gaps. How can we fill this gap? Because at the end of the day, we want local content to be created by local people. We should be the one being quoted by international media, not the other way around. Like Majuru, you should be able to write stories that can be quoted by Voice of America, you know. But you cannot go and quote Voice of America about local issue in South Sudan. So, and for this World Press Freedom Day, we really want stakeholders to take the media development in South Sudan very seriously, because the media is the fourth estate of government. Yeah, so if we have weak media, that means that our stories will be written by the international media. And of course, they will write the story the way they want. But if we develop the media in South Sudan, our stories will be written by South Sudanese journalists, and we shall have the international media to quote us, to copy what we are reporting. We tell our own stories the way we want it.
Thank you so much, Madam Irene. Joel,
Yes.
maybe you can add something, and let's hear from you also as an editor. What have you been experiencing between your work and your reporters from your media houses that you work when they go out to cover stories of common interest and public interest, of South Sudan interest? What is always the challenges that you face as an editor? Sometimes you look at the content the editor has, the reporter has written, and how you want it to finally go to the consumers at the end of the day. So maybe if you fear about the life of your reporter, you fear about the life of the media house you work for, you fear about yourself even as the editor. So what are, maybe if you have been having this kind of fear, let us know, be honest to yourself.
Yeah, you know, there is two things that we really need to understand. There is a self-censorship in media, and there is also a government censorship or security censorship. So a self-censorship, you cannot really address it quickly because maybe that one is on the management level. Some of the articles that are more of interest, and then maybe like as an editor, I may say that this story is not going to be broadcast. Then that is a self-censorship. So in South Sudan, Irene has mentioned clearly that, you know, interest in media is when there is empowerment. The media need a support. Yeah. Secondly, our communities, our South Sudanese citizens should understand the importance of local contents. For us as a media, we are facing a lot of challenges because the citizens don't value the work that we are doing. If they don't value what we are doing, okay, then why do you expect the international to value them? You have a Radio Pakita and you want to listen to BBC. BBC will not tell you what is happening in Juba. Yeah? Maybe iRadio will tell you, or Radio Pakita will tell you, or other radio will tell you. So that means you invest on local contents that will make your journalists to become more promoted by international. So come to the editings or other content creations and other things. Journalists, we have a brave journalist in our country. I must testify that. They go hard areas. And this is way back from 2010 elections to 11 referendums, the war in Illich in 2012, yeah, plus other conflict that erupted, yeah. Journalists always go to hard areas, yeah, so that they can get the information reached to the public. And for that matter, I think between 2013 and 2018, international has been using referrals from us. So they talk to the national journalists, and then that is very important thing. And we cannot discredit our journalists that they are not doing work. They are doing work. They are doing a brilliant work because they bring the stories based on their capacity. Yeah? And we also need to appreciate the work of Media Development Institute because it's one of the brilliant institutions now that produce journalists yearly. Yeah? And these are the journalists that come to the field and also work with editors and help the editors In media, there is a low pay. It's a career that does not have more money. And now you will see most of the professional journalists, they are leaving the career after they build themselves with the media house. You may build that individuals. You take him for trainings for nearly 5-7 years. Tomorrow, you get a job with the UN, he will leave you.
So do you say that
You are investing.
do you say journalism in South Sudan or worldwide is of low pay, or is it only because in South Sudan?
Actually, it's not actually in South Sudan. It's all about the region and also in Africa.
But if you go to maybe
Some of the world.
Uganda, Kenya, and some part of Africa, you'll find that some journalists are paid well.
Because there is a market. When there is a market for media, then you will see journalists are paid well. Take the example of South Sudan. We don't have more television network. So we have only the government-owned network, which is SSBC. Now, you have a professional journalist who are doing TV production. You want them to be accommodated in SSBC alone. That means we don't have a privatized media houses that will provide jobs for journalists so that they get better paid. But we have to acknowledge the support of the donors, because some of the media which are getting support from the donors, they have a well-paid job that can also keep their journalists to consistently work in the institution, because you invest on someone. It's not a one-time things. You invest on journalists, they get trainings, you pay money for them. You want them to get the back what they have learned. Yeah, and that's why we are coming with World Press Freedom Day, so that we highlight the gaps and also how this gap can be closed.
Thank you so much, Choljan. And dear viewer, thank you so much for following African Morning Breakfast Show. This is more of a journalistic kind of discussion right here on African Morning Breakfast Show on SABC World Press Freedom Day. If you like the work of the media, it is time for you to join hands with the journalists of South Sudan and the media practitioners in the country in commemorations of the World Press Freedom Day. Remember, if you're following us online, SSBC TV, like, comment, and share on other social media handles of SABC. Right here, we continue to discuss about World Press Freedom Day. Madam Irene, you just talk a little bit about the challenges the journalists are going through, and given the fact that you said journalists have been performing well in the media industry. Do you say that the different stakeholders that work with the journalists, who are maybe problem to the work of the journalists?
I cannot point fingers. Like I said before, we have challenges. I cannot say journalists are totally professional. We have professional journalists, but also we have those who are practicing without maybe proper training skills in journalism or formal training. So those challenges are there. Of course, we are human, we make mistakes. Yeah, we are human, we make mistakes, and sometimes journalists do make mistakes. But also sometimes our stakeholders do make mistakes. For example, when a journalist is arrested, I have been following cases of journalists many times back, almost for 10 years now. I have been working with AMDIS. I started as media development officer, where I follow a lot of cases of journalists when they are arrested. I can attest to you that some of the cases are because journalists made mistakes. For example, if you are going to the field, if you did not carry your ID, the security can arrest you and say, where is your ID? And, how can I know that you're a journalist? That is one of them. Another thing could be misunderstanding. Okay, you go there, those one who go to the field, sometimes you are pushed, journalists should go behind, or don't set your camera here, so those things are there. But also, from our stakeholders, I have seen that there is a lack of knowledge of the role of media. Some people totally do not know the role of media. They think, especially in South Sudan, we really do not respect the media. We don't value journalists. you know, when journalists go to the event, you know, other people are treated better than journalists. And sometimes journalists do get annoyed because, first of all, they are not recognized, they are not treated well, and because their role is not understood by people. Some people look at journalists as spy, that these people are just coming to spy, you know, they are coming to misquote us, they are against us, they are against the government and all that. But journalists are not against the government. Journalists are partners to the government. We actually want to support the government by doing the right thing. For example, if you push me from recording close to the person who is speaking, I will go back with a voice which is not clear. Huh? And that will affect the work of journalists, because now people will say, these journalists are not professional. You listen to the voice recorded by Bakita Radio and compare it to VOA. You find that the quality is very poor, just because that journalist was not maybe treated well. The journalist might have been pushed to go and record from speakers. Sometimes journalists sit under the speaker, you know, and start recording, and you know that that audio will not come out clear. So
Yes,
we have misunderstanding from the stakeholders on the role of journalists. They don't understand.
So
So
what do you
we
think?
have to.
What do you think the journalists should do for them to be respected? In case if there are misconduct that the journalists maybe play also against these stakeholders.
Yes. Various stakeholders like media institutions have been training journalists on the code of conduct. We have code of conduct which is produced by the media authority. So we have been taking journalists through the code of conduct to respect the code of conduct, to always be on a better side by carrying their IDs, identifying themselves well, and you know, writing the story ethically. That is what we have been doing. And for MDI also, we have been ensuring that we train journalists from the scratch. Yeah, even if you are a working journalist, if you go to MDI, we start training you like you did not have any knowledge of the media, so that by the time you finish the course, you come back as a different person. So those are some of the efforts that we have been doing. But the work should not be only on journalists, because both sides have issues. Journalists might have issues, and also the other stakeholders have issues. So the other stakeholders also need to be aware that, you know, about the role of journalists. So it come back to us as the stakeholders. We need to create awareness, especially with the other stakeholders who are not journalists. We have to create awareness that these are the work of journalists. Please respect them. Please let them do their work, and also we allow you to do your work, because at the end of the day, all of us are contributing to the nation building. All of us have to be better for a better representation of the country.
Good.
And addition, yeah, just to add on what Irene is saying, you know, understanding the journalist's perspective, journalists, they are like anybody in the society. And that's the first thing that should be understood. Journalists, their husband, their wife, their daughters, their sisters, their brothers, if we understand that, then why do you need to treat your brother badly? Yeah? But when you put your mind that somebody moving with camera is an enemy, then that's where the problems fall. And I don't understand why our citizens become more scared of seeing somebody with camera or recorder, and then they begin to run away. Like when you try to collect books in the market, you ask them, how is the prices? They will, I'm not allowed to talk. They will run away. They don't want to talk. And this is the information, maybe it will change the life of others. Yeah? That means even the local community who cannot arm journalists, they are also a problem, because they don't want to give information that can change life. Look at other places we have been moving. The moment they see journalists, yeah, somebody will just wave on the camera. Yeah, he will begin to wave on the camera because you want to be seen on the screens. Even people who are watching football, they normally see that. Yeah, because people begin to have a confidence. They have a confidence that journalists or media is part of us. Because if it is not part of us, why do we need to have a school of journalism? Even in the public institution. Our public institution in South Sudan, we have schools of journalism. So where do you expect to admit children who will not get a job? Clearly, it tells that it has been green light that that field must exist. In the government institution, there is Ministry of Information. In the states, there is Ministry of Information. There is Information Commission, because you want the information to reach the people. But the information cannot reach to the people without the resource.
And in fact, not to be biased, everything that everyone is doing is information. Even
Exactly.
if you are not a journalist, you write in the office, you have your computer,
You
you're
are sending
typing, it is information. Finally, before I let you go, where is this World Press Freedom Day going to be celebrated here in South Sudan? Are we talking of Juba, or are we talking of some part of the state? And who are the people going to join hand with the journalists to take part in the commemoration? Irene?
Yes, let me start with in Juba. In Juba, we are going to have it at the National Communication Authority in Gumbo Sherkat. So this time the celebration is unique because we want to thank the government for supporting us, especially by NCA giving us the venue free of charge. That is a very good contribution from the government, because we never had this event at a government compound. Now we are going to have it at telecommunication, which is very, very good. Another celebration is going to be in Yambio, which is going to be supported by UNESCO, and the Union of Journalists is spearheading the preparation for the World Press Freedom Day in Yambio. And another one is going to be in Wau. That one is also going to be by the Union of Journalists of South Sudan. So we have 3 different celebrations in South Sudan, big celebration, let me say, in South Sudan. So our colleague from the union will be going to Wau and Yambio, and some of other journalists also from other media institutions will join them in Wau and in Yambio. In Juba here, our stakeholders are going to join us: the Ministry of Information, Media Authority, National Communication Authority, the Police, Ministry of Interior will be part of it, and other stakeholders will join the celebration tomorrow at National Communication Authority.
Thank you so much. In 20 seconds, your message to the viewers.
I would like to invite everybody as the chairperson for the organizing committee. Like I said before, World Press Freedom Day, press freedom is for journalists, but freedom of expression is for everybody. So everybody is welcome for this dialogue, which is going to take place tomorrow at the National Communication Authority.
Thank you so much. Chol, maybe your message to your colleagues, the journalists, and the friends of the media in the country.
Yeah, thank you. This is a great day for us, for the media, to create awareness. Yeah, our objective of doing this and calling all the stakeholders to come and participate is to ensure that we send a signal and we build relationship. Yeah, the relationship is not between journalists and the government alone. It's also with the stakeholders who are also supporting the media. So we will close the gap and work together as a South Sudanese, as a world, as Africans. So that will help in ensuring that we send the right information. I call the journalists to come and celebrate this important day, because this is the day which is really giving us an opportunity to talk about the challenges facing us, to talk about our achievements that we have reached so far in the media development, and also to show to the world that we are key elements in the society, and also share our experience. There will be a lot of dramas that will be presented, yeah? Then people will talk about their experience, how this censorship of journalism become problems, how they resolve them. These are testimony that will be narrated. As Irene mentioned, this event is being diversified this time. It's not happening in Juba. We also need to consider our states so that at least they also have a celebration, because they will not see like Juba is the South Sudan. So it has to be extended to other places so that at least there is a good participation. Let's stand up and celebrate our days, and also share our experience together and take a copy.
Thank you so much, Chual Jan and Madam Irene. And dear viewer, thank you so much for following African Morning Breakfast show right here on SABC. We have been talking about World Press Freedom Day that is commemorated globally on the 3rd of May every year. And this year, South Sudanese journalists, media practitioners, and media development organizations with their partners and the government of the Republic of South Sudan join hands together to help the journalists commemorate and celebrate the World Press Freedom Day for them to reflect back on the issues and the work of the journalists in the country. If you like the media, always watch TV like as you're following right now. You've been listening to the radio, reading the newspapers, magazine, and also website. That is a day that South Sudanese journalists and journalists all over the world look back to the work that they have been doing, serving humanity all over the world and in South Sudan in particular.